By now, in the year 2025, climate change is a well-known issue. Worldwide headlines are swarmed with images of natural disasters. Governments fail to put efficient policies in place, this despite the release of IPCC reports year after year. Why is that? And is the image of climate change relayed by the media truthful? Does the proper information reach us in the right way? Hi, my name is Lucille. I am a volunteer with the Arkbound Foundation, and today I'm going to talk to you about climate change and about books, and you will soon see how the two of them are linked. Last December, the Breakthrough National Centre for Climate Restoration, which is an Australian thinking tank, released a new report centering on the climate crisis. The reality depicted by it seems far worse than anything we have anticipated so far. First, the report obviously mentions natural disasters. These include the rising of sea levels, or the melting of permafrost, or even the destruction of carbon sinks. They are well-known consequences of climate change. But what is more surprising and even more worrying is that the report highlights the fact that temperatures are actually rising faster than expected. This graph shows the difference between the expected temperature and the observed ones of the last few years. We can see that for the year 2023, the expected temperature was of 1.3 degrees Celsius, and the observed one went well over 1.5 degrees. This means that natural disasters are likely to increase in frequency right now and not in some distant future. Two examples of this are the wildfires in Los Angeles and the floods in Spain. Another theme that the report touches upon is societal decline. This is something that seems less obvious when it comes to talking about consequences of climate change, as the first thing that usually springs up to mind are natural disasters. Yet, it is a very real threat. The graph that we have here shows how a simple change in rainfall patterns can lead to government failures. Let us follow the path. Here we have change in rainfall pattern, drought, crop failure, food shortage and insecurity, spike in food prices, large-scale hoarding and societal tensions, protests and riots, and then governance failures. All of this calls for drastic changes, and yet nothing seems to be happening. In some cases, it is even worsening, and year after year, the COPs are not achieving enough. Sometimes, when an improvement is made, it is actually cancelled out by something else, which gives a fake illusion of progress. In Australia, for instance, the CO2 emissions coming from electricity have been reduced, but this reduction is kind of cancelled out by an increase in CO2 coming from other sectors. The current climate change-related actions and education strategies also lack a place for countries from the Global South and for indigenous populations. Oftentimes, these countries are the ones producing the least amount of greenhouse gases emissions, and yet are the ones to suffer the most from consequences right now. Kenya, Ethiopia, and Somalia all have suffered massive droughts in the past years, and yet their respective share of the greenhouse gases emissions are 0.2%, 0.32%, and 0.06%. In comparison, the US accounts for 11% of global greenhouse gases emissions. Despite this, scientists and activists from these regions tend to be underrepresented in climate mitigation efforts, and important subjects such as neocolonialism are just starting to get explored. The conclusion is simple: we need people from different backgrounds and not just from the global north. And there are many subjects that remain to be explored. So how does this all relate to books? Books play a key role in our education and in how information reaches our brain. Many studies argue that knowledge gained from reading a physical copy is easier to remember than knowledge that is gained through looking at a screen. And while climate change is a tedious subject, reading a book about it might turn out to be less overwhelming than doom scrolling on social media for hours on end. This is where Arkbound comes into play. Arkbound is a foundation that supports the writing of such books. Their main purpose is to encourage people to care more about climate change. They offer author mentoring, support through writing and editing, and aim at empowering voices coming from all backgrounds. Here are some examples of books that have already been published. Great adaptations. In the Shadow of the Climate Crisis by Morgan Phillips focuses on adaptation solutions to climate change. Ellie and the Sapiens by Alan Oberman is a fantasy novel centered around a heroine and her fight against a power-hungry oil tycoon. And Value Beyond Money by Diana Finch explores the mechanisms behind how economic systems are built. You can find and order these books and many others on the Arkbound Foundation website, which is linked in the description. Right now, as I speak, Arkbound is working on its latest book, which centers around the climate crisis. With authors coming from the UK, the US, Kenya, Sudan, and many other countries, the book tackles the environmental crisis chapter by chapter, with each one focusing on a specific section. Some examples of themes that are being talked about are ecofeminism, ecofascism, neocolonialism, and societal decline. The book will come out in the current of July 2025. Its title is Climate Collapse, a Call for Action from Around the World. You can learn more about it on the Arkbound website and also discover everything else that the Foundation has to offer. Thank you so much for watching.